Hello, everyone. Thanks for visiting. My name is Lynn Nalvin, and I would like to tell you about a book that I published this past August. It's entitled Through Their Eyes, The American Doll's View of History.
I have been collecting dolls for the past 30 years and have met many other doll lovers along the way. The one thing that struck me was that other collectors like myself were always interested in the story of their dolls, who made them, who owned them, what collectors call provenance.
I would like to read you just a couple paragraphs from my opening of the book to give you an idea of what you will find inside. This book is more than a history of dolls. This is history as seen through the eyes of the doll. Dolls cannot really see, of course, but imagine if they could. What would they tell us they saw throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries in America?
Perhaps they would tell us about the early colonial days when dolls were hand-stitched from scraps of cloth by a skilled seamstress who did not want to waste the fabric left over from a dress she had just made. Or maybe how sturdier dolls were hand-hewn from branches of ash and maple, or turned on a wood lathe and then stuck with pegs for arms and legs.
Would the beautiful imported French porcelain babes of the early 1800s remember the chips and cracks they endured, not to mention the tears of the little girls who so often dropped them? Possibly the rag dolls could recount how they were handcrafted on the kitchen tables of skilled artisans who stuffed their soft bodies and heads, painted their faces, and fashioned their small, beautifully designed costumes.
In my book, I try to show how various social, economic, and cultural factors influenced the development of the doll from its early beginnings in the American Northeast to a thriving industry in the mid-20th century. It is fascinating to see how the doll, as plaything, grew in popularity and turned into such a cultural phenomenon. I would like to refer you to some of the pictures I included in my book. At the end of the first chapter, From Artisans to Entrepreneur, I show you some of the dolls made by such doll artists as Martha Chase, who started making dolls on her kitchen table in Rhode Island. Next, I would like to show you a Schoenhut doll, whose body is all hand-carved in wood, made by Schoenhut and his two sons in the late 1800s. Joel Ellis and Mason and Taylor, all of Springfield, Vermont, made what might be considered the first jointed dolls, also made of wood from head to toe with turning hands and feet. From New England we traveled to New York City, where a number of doll makers, including Horsemen, first imported dolls from Europe. Ships carrying dolls and doll parts, mainly from Germany and England, would dock in the hundreds of ports lining the shores of Manhattan. In the mid-1800s, these companies started making their own dolls, cloth, composition, and lastly, vinyl. My book chronicles the creation and growth of the Horseman Doll Company, including information about some of its major competitors. Here's one question often asked by many doll collectors. Is making dolls an art form? In my favorite chapter, entitled, But Is It Art?, I take a look at that question. Unlike what are considered works of art, such as figurative sculptures, dolls are meant to be playthings. Most of them get pretty beat up from rough play and neglect, not the fate of most objects of art. The irony of the timeless quality of porcelain and the durability of composition, and later plastic vinyl doll, is that many of these dolls did survive the rigors of play, which have given doll lovers and collectors a large cache of some very beautiful dolls. After all is said and done, however, the doll is a plaything and was, in its early days, intended to endure only the lifetime of a child. Michael Clapper, a professor at the Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, examined the impact of the Industrial Revolution on the art world in the 19th and 20th century. Clapper characterized the men and women who dealt in reproductions of original works of art for the general market during this time as, quote, art entrepreneurs, close quote. By applying Professor Clapper's ideas to the development of the doll, it's easy to consider such doll artists as Martha Chase and Madame Alexander as doll entrepreneurs. I'd like to talk a little bit about the resources I used in writing this book. Arlene Jensen, the wife of now deceased Don Jensen, very generously allowed me the use of pictures from his 2-volume history of the Horseman Doll Company.
There are 2 doll historians that I would like to acknowledge who were really very kind to let me use pictures and quotes from their books. The first I'd like to talk about is Judith Eisen, wonderful doll historian who has written a number of volumes. I used her book on ideal dolls a great deal. I think anybody who's interested in the one of the major competitors to the Horseman Doll Company would like to check out Judith's book. Another book by Judith Eisen that I'd like to bring to your attention is this American Characters Dolls. Judith goes into great detail about the dolls that we might have had as children from the 1940s on up into the late 1900s. Another doll historian I'd like to refer to, and I'd like to acknowledge, is Ursula Mertz, who did a wonderful 2-volume identification guide for composition dolls. I refer to the whole history of composition in my books if you're interested, and Ursula's books are a wonderful resource for all the different kinds of dolls made of composition. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I invite you to check out my book, Through Their Eyes, The American Doll's View of History. I have it listed on eBay, and you can order it directly from me with the information that's on the screen. If you reference that you saw my video and visited my website, I'll give you a 15% discount with free shipping. I hope you enjoy, and thanks for watching.